Okay, hello again. In this second tutorial, I want to look at bringing assets into Unity. So we're talking specifically graphical assets within this one, just importing your models and getting them into the scene so they're visible. Also, we'll look at adjusting the camera as well, so it's a bit more of a suitable view also. But primarily, this video is just purely about getting assets in and getting materials on them. So to do that, we need to go down to the project area. Okay, and it's presuming that you already have your models somewhere, in a suitable folder structure. Eventually you might sort of save your textures and that directly into Unity's file structure that you saved it within a folder called Unity Project or something like that, which like I did. So eventually you should be able to do it straight to there. But if you need to import them manually, as I showed you in the last video, by right clicking, import new asset. Now I've used this, I'm going to be importing a spaceship into this video, and if you're exporting from Max, if you create your own model, you need to do it as an object file, okay, or OBJ. It's because that's one of the main super formats for Unity. Your textures, TGA format, nothing else. TGA format, it's a lossless format, and it's mainly the industry standard used in contemporary engines, so definitely make sure that you're using that. This model I did not make, I'd like to point out. I stole this model rather naughtily, but I really liked it, so I thought it would be good for the tutorial. Eventually I'll go into, if it's the Henley students level 2, we'll look at more creating our own models and stuff much later on, just to kind of let you know that bit. But have a look at my 3D tutorials in the meantime if this is what interests you. Otherwise, this spaceship model, I'll put the link below for the media file one, so you can download that. Otherwise it will also be on Blackboard as well. Okay, so if we go to the object file, not the Max file, open that, import. Straight away that brings it in, very straightforward. But you can see here it's also created a materials folder, and within that there's nothing in there, absolutely nothing. I can also demonstrate now what I meant earlier by the 1 column and 2 column. If you're in 1 column layout, you can see it's basically this. It's just a simple hierarchy, and I really like this. In fact, it's easy to use because what you can do is just slap it down the left hand side like that and have your project ones over there, which I've kind of used on my bigger layout. I'll go to my big screen layout. You can kind of see it a bit here. I do actually prefer this layout to the one I demonstrated in the last video. I think it's kind of a little more easy to use, but as I said before, arrange it exactly how you want it. That's what's important. It doesn't really entirely matter. So obviously have a width one if you're using the other format, because it's a lot more straightforward. But if you're using a 1 column one, then this is definitely better. And the first thing I would also do is create, if you haven't got one already, don't know why I did that, apologise, delete that. Without explaining, I will just create things. I create an asset folder. Normally it creates one for you, so if I go back to my layout one, you can see it's actually got it there, assets, but strangely enough on the 1 column one it hasn't done that. So it's probably already in an assets folder, everything. It just shows you on this, which I never noticed before. Favourites is useful though. You can put your favourites, quickly access them if you've got repeated ones that you've put in all the time. But yeah, basically this is kind of self-explanatory. We've got the spaceship in there. If you want to get it into the scene now, all you've got to do is left click, drag it in, and as you can see, in comparison to the little cube and the little sphere, it is humongous, this model, but it's probably quite a sensible scale actually. So if we have a look around it, yeah, it's quite a nice model. That's why I chose it though. It's kind of looks a bit snazzy. Obviously, it's a little bit crap now that that's so small and down there. We've got a choice. I think the ship's probably a little bit too big, so we can change that in here by going 0.5, maybe even less. Maybe I'll make it 0.1, 0.1 and 0.1. That might be a little bit more suitable. Still think it's probably a bit big, so let's make it a bit smaller still. 0.5, 0.05. That's more like it. That's a little better. I'm a bit more happy about that now. Okay, so the pivot point for this was in the center, so that's the way it would come in. Let's delete that cube, so delete key. If you ever want to bring anything back, it's a typical Control Z. That's all there is to it. So delete, delete. The camera, let's move that now, because it's kind of sitting under there. All we can see is this shape here. The camera moves really straight forward. It's very, very straightforward. You can see these lines coming out of it, leading to this. That is this. It's this window right here. And depending on your aspect ratio, okay, so standalone looks like that. That's a typical screen. You can see that the aspect ratio has changed here and it's changed there. Will depend on what the view is, but you can see if you move it back, there's a little preview window here. So even if you have got this taking up most of it, you can always see it in here anyway, which is kind of cool. And that's kind of all there is to that. You know, just arrange it in a certain place that's kind of easy for you to see. For this project, when we get to it, we'll be using orthographic camera, because let's point out you can change that. If you want orthographic camera, you can set it so that's purely side on. So if you're doing a side scroller one, because you can make 2D games in Unity as well as 3D games, then this is the one to use. But for now, I'm going to keep it in perspective. I quite like perspective. And you can obviously do the typical rotate round and stuff like that. Pitch black though, because there's no light in the scene, which, oops, sorry about that, accidentally hit the wrong key. I've been doing that a lot lately, new keyboard, you see, that's the problem with it. So, yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. Let's bring a light into the scene so we can actually see something. So in hierarchy, create, and down here we've got directional light, point light, spotlight, area light. If you use max before, then you'll have a very, or even Maya, so on and so forth, you'll have a good idea of what these lights actually are. And directional light, obviously, whichever direction it's facing in, it will light it. So that kind of emulates the sun to some degree. The easiest one, I think, to put into a scene, you know, just makes it very straightforward. Doesn't matter really where you put it. Yeah, so if I pop it like that, we can now see on the model that it is lit, and we can see in the game view that it is lit on there too. Let's find where that camera's from. There you are. So we can move that a little bit forward, can't we? Because it's miles away. There we go. Select that, press F to jump to it, focus, F for focus, and that's it. That's all there is to that. We've got the light in the scene. If you wanted to explore the other lights, then do so. Spotlight goes without saying, you know, kind of a show light. Area light, just a specific area. Point light is kind of like, I suppose it'd be like having a bulb without a lampshade. It just lights up everything. You know, I used it sometimes when I was doing the sun, because, you know, it kind of works, but you know, really, most of the time you only need a directional light in most of your games, especially considering that in Unity 3 you don't have shadows. It doesn't make much difference. It only has basic shading like this, so you don't really need it. And that's that. Let's get the materials on it. If we go to materials down here, which is nicely created for us, we can already go into here. In here it gives us the option, so it's actually created a material for us, which is quite nice. Just to demonstrate it, if I delete this material, yes, I will delete that material, this freaks out. It goes, and no colour, so I'm going to go to some random colour. Fair enough, that's all good. It doesn't entirely matter. If we go into materials, right click, import new asset. Okay, we go to textures. We can then select the textures that we want to bring in. So in this case, we have to do it one at a time. Import that texture, import glass texture, and import. I wouldn't worry about the glass texture at this point, but definitely the normal and diffuse one, which can be used. So this one's mostly used just for reflections. That's all it'd be used for. So these two are the main ones you're going to use. In fact, let's not worry about that one at all. Let's just get rid of it. Yeah, bye bye. Now the next bit we've got to do is we've got to create material. So if we right click anywhere in here, then we can go to create this way, just another way of doing it. So not just this, we can also just right click here, create, go to material, and let's create a new material, and let's call this spaceship. So as you see, it's the same as the one before. Now what we can do is change the shader type, because this will allow us just to put a colour on it. I believe we can just drag that in. So if we drag the diffuse texture, and the diffuse texture is a colour map. Okay, so this is the first bit of, I suppose, 3D theory that we're teaching you, is that a diffuse is a colour map. It adds colour to an object or a text. God, Mark, get a grip. 3D model. So if we drag that on, you can see in the example down here what it looks like. We can then drag that material onto the model itself, and there we go, it has a texture. There's also something called a normal map. This gives, it's an illusion, this map. What it does is it stores light values within it, and without going too deep on this, for this tutorial, this is how you get like a lot of detail in what are low poly meshes. And by low poly meshes I mean very low detail meshes. There's not much definition to this. You can see that it's very blocky, but from a distance it looks alright. And if we want to get details in here, then we're going to have to use normal mapping in order to achieve that. And to best demonstrate normal mapping, I suppose I better add it. So in order to do that, we have to change the shader type. So we want to change that to a bumped diffuse. Okay, and that gives us the extra option for our normal map. Drag that over, and there we go. There's the normal map on it. So if I rotate that round, just so you can kind of see the difference between it. Let's go to the light, and let's rotate it around. Let's bring it right the way to it, so we can do that quite easily. Okay. So if we have a look, you'll notice there's little ridges on things like this, on there, for example, that are now lit, have definition. If I take the normal map off, then I can clearly demonstrate the difference. If I bring this back to just diffuse, completely flat. So what it does is it simulates details by basically creating shadows and highlights within a 2D texture. Very clever stuff. And this is what really kind of changed the ball game as far as modern games is concerned. This is what's given us, I think, such advanced graphics within such a short space of time. And if you look at the last 10 years, if you look back at PlayStation, right, and even on PS2 at the start of it, the games were, very flat, more or less coloured, very much like this, and they looked nice. I'm not going to say they looked terrible. They did look nice for their day, but then when normal maps came along, that completely changed it. We can have more detailed meshes, and as computers got more powerful, then the models got better as well. So things got really advanced, and that's what a lot of mobile games are playing on. Normal maps really, really do make things look so much nicer. But there's rules to it, and when I do modelling with you, when I cover it in these videos, I'm going to be going over that in quite some detail, because you can really ruin a model as well if you don't get that process right. So that's all there is to that. We've got normal map, we've got a diffuse on it, and we can kind of see where the glass texture would be relevant now. But apart from that is about it. So if you can achieve this from this video tutorial, then that's an alright start. Obviously make sure that you keep things nice and neat in folders. This does most of it for you. That's what I love about Unity. It does most of it for you. It's great in that sense. But yeah, you can add things to your favourites. To point out how to do that, if you click on it, okay, and then you go over here and you can save search, then that'll do that. I think you can go to, how do you do it? It's right click. Can't entirely remember it now. I'm sure you just do. Well, I know you can do that anyway. Spaceship, and it'll do that. And then you can just save that one. So that's kind of cool. That works really well. But yeah, I mean, apart from that, it's really, really, really a nice game engine. So that's it for this tutorial, more or less. I forgot to say about this, didn't I? I said I would. Textured, wireframe, okay, texture wired, which is useful to see. Render paths, okay, and light map resolution. Really only relevant, these two, if you're actually creating your own light maps and you're plotting out where it's going to render. You're not going to need these. You might need light maps when you get more advanced using Unity and you understand how to create your own 3D models. But apart from that, you're not really going to do that. If you do know how to make light maps, then that's going to be useful for you. Especially when you start creating your games and you want to see, if things are working out smoothly. If you're using Unity 3, of course. If you're using Unity Pro, then it's kind of very straightforward because it's got its own built-in system to deal with that. So, yeah, that's all there is to it. I hope I've covered everything. It gets kind of hard to make sure of that. But yeah, I think it's more or less done. Okay, see you in the next video.